Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a UK political update where I'm going to revisit this divisive topic of immigration because this is super important for what's going on in the UK at the moment. It is basically eclipsing everything else that's happening. And it's also probably relevant to the rest of Europe because something like this is going to happen in most European nations to some degree. There will be an element of immigration being at the forefront of politics in the EU across Europe, because this is going to be, I think, the topic that affects countries the most, whether in reality or by perception, and as a result, it's going to be the topic that is most easily weaponized by nefarious actors, state actors and individuals. So state actors like Russia, Iran, North Korea, China with disinformation, but also other people like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is weaponizing this right now. If you look at Elon Musk's threads, his profile on Twitter, it is essentially calling for horrific things. He even essentially advocated for the execution of British politicians. I mean, it's literally that bad. So in the last 24 hours, Elon Musk has said at least these things, called for at least these things. He's retweeted a notorious Nazi account and said the West should be a white ethno-state. He said immigrants should be ethnically cleansed. He's agreed that there would be revenge on immigrants, and he's called for the execution of British government officials by sort of retweeting things and agreeing with them wholeheartedly. Yes. So, as someone said, Gad Saad said, every single one of these demonic creatures should be executed, yet Britain decided that their crimes should be ignored because Islamophobia. When real men wake up, it won't be pretty. I warned you for decades. Elon Musk said, it's high time. It's time. High time indeed. And the craven cowards in authority too, especially them. So especially those in authority, i.e. politicians, should be executed. That's what Elon Musk, the most powerful man in the world with this platform, is calling for. So I want to return to this because it's so freaking important and there's so much disinformation. Now, I was attacked by a number of people when I did my last video. I was trying to be as objective as possible, knowing it's impossible to be that. I have my views, but I also want to report what's going on and how there is a movement that is, I think, underwritten by racism, but it's not to say there aren't genuine issues with immigration. But my position on immigration is it's freaking complicated because on the one hand you need these people to do the jobs that you don't want to do, and on the other on that same hand you want things to be cheap in your country, so you get cheap labor to do that. On the other hand, you know, there is social cohesion issues, there are space issues, you can argue, there are all of these things that come with immigration. And then you have asylum, which is something else different from economic migration. So, you know, if you want to train nurses up in the UK, if you want British people to do fruit picking, then you're going to have to pay an absolute ton more money. And that's going to cost, and that'll be inflationary. So if you're happy with prices going right up, then, okay, let's shut down Filipino nurses coming to UK and foreign doctors and foreign fruit pickers and whatever. But it's understanding all of this. You know, we can't have this impossible idyllic state, this utopia of the 1850s or the 1950s. And people say, oh, I want it to go to the 1950s. Like, okay, well, here are all the issues with the 1950s. You have this rose-tinted idea that there was chocolate box utopia, like chocolate box village utopia in England, in the UK in the 1950s. Like, do you know what the stats were for this and for that and for this? And anyway, it's just difficult. So which way round am I going to do this kind of update, this addendum? We're going to go to look at some more of the footage just to give you a sense of like what's going on and who's doing it. And is this the country that you want to see? Do you want to see this going on? Because this is where it's at the moment with certain communities where immigration is being weaponized and there is an underlying sense of racism. Send them home. So, like, I would ask anyone that's in support of this kind of activity, Elon Musk being one of them, is what would you think if these people were Antifa? If these people were Palestinian, pro-Palestinian marchers going around with flares saying, send all the Israelis home? How do you feel about that? Like, is this what you want to see, people in balaclavas and flares going around shouting this kind of stuff? The other thing I worry about is the proliferation of children at a lot of these events, which really deeply worries me. But these people in these balaclavas, then you had the one, the whole protest going through the Canary Wharf shopping centre was horrific, in my opinion, with children as well. It ended up with people getting pepper sprayed and then children getting pepper spray and then people saying, having to go at the police. It's like, no, if you bring your children to what looks like a fairly contentious protest, like whose fault is it that they get some pepper spray in their faces when you are attacking the police in balaclavas with kids around, the kids that you've brought? So, you know, I feel very strongly about this, but this. So on and so forth. You know, that's not the country I want to see. This wasn't happening a couple of weeks ago. This is, you know, these sorts of people are, I think, threatening to my sense of society, right? Like, again, I ask you, you know, are these just concerned parents? You know, if these were Antifa or pro-Palestinian protesters going around doing this, and you're supportive of this, would you be supportive of that? Why do you feel the need to wear what's quite a threatening balaclava? Or, you know, so then we have all the kind of roundabouts situation where the people are painting George's crosses, St. George's Cross on roundabouts, as you can see here. So running out in the middle of the night, painting roundabouts and whatnot. And this kind of tongue-in-cheek response actually is pretty important to me. This kind of sums up. What are you doing tonight, lads? Dressing up as Batman and Robin and painting crosses on roundabouts. Why? Saving the country, innit? Do painted roundabouts make greedy CEOs combust? No. Well, you're doing F all. You're just virtue signalling idiots. So the point is that what is that really achieving? Like, there was a great post I saw on Facebook the other day. It's like, instead of spending like an hour of your time going and painting roundabouts or putting up flags, like, go and offer, like, and someone literally had this all laid out, like, here's where you can offer to paint. These people in your local community really need help with decorating their house because they're unable to do it, or this or that, or your local community centre. Like, if you really want to be patriotic, go and do something that genuinely helps your community and do it in the name of your patriotism. But otherwise, this looks like rather a lot of virtue signalling that I don't think achieves a massive amount, although we'll talk about some achievements in a second. Now, here we have a Holiday Inn that is being surrounded by these protesters wanting to get the migrants out of there. They're shouting, "Get them out." So as I said in the previous video, you know, how representative are these people? How much of this is a problem that is, I mean, there's a typical picture. How much of this is a problem that is just the complete fault of the present government that's been in a year? How much of this is the Conservatives' fault over the last 14 years? How much of this is the fault of just the world and the way it's going? And you know, we have to deal with people seeking asylum. We have to process them. If we're not processing them fast enough, you know, what do you do with those people? Now, we had, I talked to you in the last video on this topic about an NHS nurse that was horrifically racially, I think, attacked in a park in Halifax. And she sadly said, after 15 years of service, I'm now clocking out this chapter. Thank you, NHS, for the 12 years. Thank you for all the memories and the knowledge. After what happened yesterday, it only validated my decision. I love what I do, but some people aren't worth my time or my care. Proud to be a healthcare worker or slave, because she was accused of being a slave. Whatever some people want to call it, justice must be served. And so now she's pulling out of the working in the NHS, which then that puts further strain on the NHS. And then, you know, when I talk about this kind of patriotism, I mean, like, is this a patriotism that is healthy? Is this a kind of patriotism that is useful, that is what we want to see? Like, do I want to drive down the road and see daubed on the side of a building the St. George's Cross and keep the dirty Muslims out of the villages, child rapists? Like, does that give me a sense of pride? Or is this entirely divisive? On the side of a building, no HMO, no Muslims. I presume that's trying to say homo nonce. So nonce in the UK is a pejorative meaning paedophile. So no Muslims, HMO nonce. Anyway, then swastikas seem to be coming back, and then this is a Chinese takeaway I was talking about with sort of go home and the front completely daubed. And then you've got war memorials now being daubed with St. George's crosses as if that's like patriotic, and now actually that's just vandalism of a site of true patriotism, right? Nothing says I'm a patriot, me, like vandalizing a war memorial. Mindless vandalism at St. George's, as St. George's flag appears on a war memorial at the clock tower there in Bodmin in the West Country. So, you know, then we have here, Patriots did this to the car of a British-born Indian NHS doctor. Stop the boats daubed on their car, and St. George's flags placed on the vehicle. And this is kind of sums it up for me. So here we have a guy being interviewed by Sky News, right, about, you know, what do you feel about this? He's a Nuneaton businessman. So this is a Nuneaton guy called Zaheen. And he's being interviewed, and then there's just people that come up and abuse him.
Yeah, no, we should...
That's the issue we have in our country. You got to use rape in our kids. This is our country. How about becoming you?
So you've got kids there. These people are drunk and shouting, "Save our kids." I mean, what are you doing? I'm pretty sure you're drunk at 2 PM with your kids in the middle of town. You know, who should be saving their kids? Like, I'm fairly sure that's not how to bring up your kids. So if we're talking about save our kids, there's a pretty good case to have your kids taken off you, type thing. And while this guy's being interviewed on TV for Sky News, this kind of abuse is being leveled at him. Like, stop graping our kids, blah, blah, blah.
Country, you got to use rape in our kids. Save our kids! This is our country. How about becoming your country and your kids?
As you can see, drinking beer there. So, yeah.
Let's walk. To avoid an escalation of the confrontation, I attempted to move Zaheen away.
Are you okay?
Yeah. Because I'm used.
And he started saying, "Because I'm used to that." So, you know, we can have debates about immigration, but like, is this the way to do it? This is just, to me, it looks like outright racism. And I think Andrew Marr said it well on LBC, and we're going to return to LBC in a second because I've got a bone to pick with them. I was listening on radio yesterday as we get into the political side of this.
So much anger, so much hate, so much despair. And what I want to say is that all this is not in general bad or wicked people trying to turn us against one another. No, this is what the algorithms are designed for. Social media is selling ringside seats for a carnival of hatred, a spectacle designed to tear us all apart. And my plea is, don't let's fall for this. Personally, I think that if Labour doesn't solve the migration crisis, it'll be turfed out at the next election. Simple as that. But if you put away social media and you walk out into the streets and you look at actual, real, three-dimensional people, they mostly smile back at you. And if you look around you, you don't hear much screaming or you don't see a collapsing country. You see perfectly decent, ordinary people rubbing along, getting on with their lives and inclined, by and large, to rather like each other. Now, that is Britain. That is the real us. Let us not be fooled.
And one of the people that's trying to fool us is, of course, Elon Musk. But when he talks about this is social media and the algorithms, just go back to this protest in the Canary Wharf shopping centre and see how many people here have phones and cameras that are just trying to catch this. This is all driven by and then cycle back into social media to generate this kind of sense of anger and resentment. Everyone with these selfie sticks and phones. And when we go back to the other protests outside the Holiday Inn, there were where do we have it? Here, everyone has their phones out, and this is all just social media virtue signaling or social media like rage farming. And that really depresses me. So I think Andrew Marr's absolutely correct there. And I let's just talk. Let's hear from Kevin Maguire here, who is on ITV News talking about this.
If you come and you claim asylum, until you're granted it, you can't work. And you get, if you're put up in a hotel or a hostel or whatever, if you get meals, you get £10 a week cash to buy clothes, toothpaste, whatever. If you don't get meals and you're living somewhere, you get 50, I think it's 49 quid a week. It has been created, all these terrible, terrible myths where Ryland Clark regurgitated, spouted most of them about free iPads. Also, Susanna regurgitated a load of myths and lies. And let's not ignore that, because...
What were the myths and lies?
You get the free iPads and all, like an El Dorado welcome. It's gone mainstream. Myths and lies have gone mainstream,
okay,
and we've got to challenge them.
So what?
And what's happening at the moment is we've gone back all the way to the worst aspects of the 1970s, where racism is becoming mainstream, and myths and lies are being peddled. If you
and I would agree there. So there's so much myth, disinformation, and just to let you know, this sort of thing is obviously not just in the UK. Here is something that went viral about a guy that gets out and no one can work out why he did this. It just appears that at traffic lights he saw people of Latino origin in a van, so he does this. And unfortunately, I got a copyright infringement on that, so I'm going to play some of the video in silence, but just to give you the sense of the anger of this guy shouting at Latinos for just existing, merely existing, saying that Spanish are going extinct, and he starts banging on the window and then having a go at the van. Just an unhinged, absolute rant. But anyway, it's really disturbing, but it gives you a sense that, you know, this is a problem, not just in the UK, that there is racial division that is being, I think, weaponized and fomented by others. This guy just goes absolutely nuts. Anyway, you can go and find that variously online, but it has been copyrighted because obviously it's viral enough to be something that they wanted to copyright. My heart rate raises when I watch stuff like this. It is, pretty horrible. But, you know, this is happening around the world where it is so easy to foment this kind of division and hatred. And that is what's happening in the US. Is that the country you want? Do you want a united country or do you want a divided country? Because these people live there. And in the UK, it is the case that NHS doctor is a British-born man of Indian or woman of Indian descent, has their car daubed. Like, is that what you want? Because you can't deport those people. Although Elon Musk is now talking about remigration, which is taking people who have migrated, it's as racist as I can think, and taking them and then just throwing them back out to wherever. In the US, it's got to a point where ICE people, I saw last night a video of ICE charging across the street to just take someone down that was not, it was horrific. We've had ICE crossing the road to take someone down, and here a protester, ICE beat a protester with a bicycle, whipping him with a baton over and over. Agent then punches a man holding the sign in the face, knocking him to the ground. Other officers try to restrain him, blah, blah, blah. So the point is, like, hats off to the UK police here, because they are trying to keep peace. They are not doing like the ICE thing. They're not border agents trying to round people up, which is what these people would want. And I don't want the UK to become that, right? But these are problems that both countries are facing in that immigration is an issue, whether in reality or perception, and it is something that everyone is having to deal with from a policy point of view, but from a social point of view as well, and from an enforcement point of view. How do you do it? My point has been that I'm not saying you can't have robust immigration regulation, but it's that you do it within the rules of the law. You follow due process, and that you do it humanely and compassionately. There is no need for anything else. Like, imagine what would happen if you let these people into the hotel, into the Holiday Inn here. Do you think these people really, we want to protect our women and children? Do you think they'd go into that hotel and protect women and children if they saw them with different coloured skin? We're going to come on to actually whether there is an effect of people doing stuff like that is kind of what they would want, which means that being horrific in your protests and the things you do and things you say does actually bring about change. First of all, it's worth noting that, at least according to the government, there has been positive change in terms of immigration statistics. So the government is coming knowing that Reform UK are biting at their heels, knowing that the Tories got kicked out, but actually they broadly failed on immigration. And so Brexit was promising all this stuff, but in the end, immigration went up. So the Labour came in knowing that they had to do something about this. So then we hear that small boats crossings in August fell to its lowest since 2019. And that's given that it was a pretty calm. So what happens is summer months, they spike for obvious reasons. Warmer temperatures, calmer seas, boat crossings happen hugely. So for August to have the lowest since 2019 is really, really significant. You had Yvette Cooper coming into Parliament as Parliament reopened after the summer recess. To talk stats. So Border Force has seen a 40% increase in interventions to stop boats crossing into Kent. So border forces are doing a better job, or they've been given more money and more resources. A small reason why boat numbers might also have fallen to a 5-year low in August. So they've gone across. They've done deals with the French that are coming into force soon. They've done deals with the Germans to try and crack smuggling gangs. So the Labour Party, and I'm not trying to be a shield for the Labour Party here, but it's pretty obvious that they know that this is one of the biggest issues, and they've actually gone about trying to do something a bit more sensible, a bit more adult about it, which is, let's go and do some deals with the Europeans, because this is where a lot of the people are coming from, rather than let's shoot people in the middle of the channel, which is literally what I've heard some of my relatives say. And that's kind of like, that's why we're going to vote reform. So we're going to get the Royal Navy to like, and you're like, oh gee. So anyway, for what it's worth, this is what Yvette Cooper said the Home Secretary said in Parliament yesterday.
In our first year in government, we've taken immediate action, laying the foundations for more fundamental reform. We have restored asylum decision-making and then rapidly increased the rate of decisions. Had we continued with the previous government's freeze on asylum decisions, thousands more people would have been in hotels and asylum accommodation by now. Instead, we removed 35,000 people with no right to be here, including a 28% increase in returns of failed asylum seekers and a 14% increase in removals of foreign criminals. We've increased raids and arrests on illegal working by 50%, and we cut the annual hotel bill by almost £1 billion in the last financial year. We are rolling out digital ID and biometric kits so immigration enforcement can check on the spot whether someone has a right to work or a right to be in the UK. And on channel crossings and organised immigration crime, we are putting in place new powers, new structures and new international agreements to help dismantle the criminal industry behind the boats. So I want to update the House on the further steps we're now taking. In August, I signed the new treaty with France, allowing us for the first time to directly return those who arrive on small boats. The first detentions took place the next day of people immediately on arrival in Dover, and we expect the first returns to begin later this month. Applications have also been opened for the reciprocal legal route, with the first cases under consideration, subject to strict security checks. We've made clear this is a pilot scheme, but the
so on and so forth, and they're changing some of the regulations. They've even, and this is so the problem for Labour is that the left will go. What you're doing is appeasing the right here, and you're being really strongly anti-immigration now, just so you appease the right. And then some will say, and that won't make any difference because they're never going to vote for you. So what are you doing pandering to the right? And then Labour might come back and say, well, look, we have to do something about immigration, and it is an issue, etc., etc. And then people further on the left would say, but then why are you rolling back human rights regulations? So, for example, one of the changes they're going to make is that they're not going to allow, at least temporarily, they're not going to allow family members to come across to accompany asylum seekers, which is something to do with, is Article 8 of the EHCR or something, some kind of human rights regulation. And they want to roll that back. So that's going to be controversial for people on the left, but people on the right, they would want that. But the people on the right also don't want to congratulate Labour for doing anything that they see as actually positive. So they're never going to get the plaudits from Reform. They're never going to get the plaudits from Conservative Party, and they're never going to get the plaudits from the people that you've just seen protesting. So this is a really difficult situation for Labour to be in. But they are trying to deal with immigration as robustly as they can, given that they are supposed to be a left-wing party. Now people are saying they're openly admitting that Labour are now just centrist, which is interesting in itself. Now the problem is you get to this ridiculous virtue signalling situation. Now this line of questioning I don't like, and I'll tell you how I would have answered it. But this is Yvette Cooper that you just heard answering a question from BBC Breakfast, talking about how bloody patriotic you are.
Do you have a flag on display in your home? On your home?
Yeah. We actually have Union Jack bunting on our garden shed at the moment. I've got St George's flags, I've got St George's bunting, I've got the Yorkshire Rose bunting as well. I've got Union Jack flags and tablecloths. We've got the lot.
What is this? Like a game of who can be the most patriotic, where patriotism is simply how many flags you've got hanging up like some virtue signalling individual. I mean, as someone says, we're only a few days away from Keir Starmer turning up in Parliament in England flag patterned suit, aren't we? So I personally, I would have answered that question. It's something like this, but that this is who I am. I'd say, to be honest, my patriotism isn't measured in how many flags I have hanging up. To me, that is a really shallow sense of patriotism. Anyone can run around with a flag draped around their neck. For me, patriotism is a pride in what the UK is, in its opportunities it gives to people, in its freedom of expression that allows people to say the things that they've been saying over the last few days and weeks. For me, it is about a history of striving for enlightenment, for scientific progress, for innovation, and so on and so forth. I would go down a more abstract route and say, pride for me is actually the London 2012 Olympics going off without an issue, being an incredibly masterfully organised and delivered celebration of who we are. That opening ceremony at 2012 Olympics, Danny Boyle, that was celebrating the NHS, celebrating the brilliance of our history, you know, when it's at its greatest. That to me is what inspires me to be proud of my nation. So on and so forth. You know, that's the direction. But I would hammer home, and it isn't me. Like I may have flags at home. I've got Ukrainian flags at home. That's positive patriotism. That I may have Union flags at home. I may have St George's flags at home. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you how adorned my house is with flags to give you a false sense of how patriotic I am. Because I don't think that's true patriotism. That to me would have been a good answer. This is pandering to this false sense of patriotism. So Susanna Reid, who you just heard earlier on the ITV news speaking to Kevin Maguire, was interviewing Chris Philp. Now, Chris Philp is the shadow Home Secretary. What that means is Yvette Cooper is our Home Secretary. The shadow Home Secretary is the opposition leader, main opposition, the Conservative Party. He was in power, Chris Philp, 14 years and then getting the country to where it was last year, and then Labour took over. So you've got a lot of Conservatives shouting down what Labour are doing when Labour are trying to right the inadequacy of the previous government. And some people are recognising this. So Susanna Reid actually held Chris Philp to account really well here. So let's listen to this.
Chris Philp is on saying that the government's doing nothing under the Conservatives.
So, sorry, he's not on here. He was on previously. But this is her actually going to town on what Chris Philp was saying.
On saying that the government's doing nothing. Under the Conservatives, immigration and the asylum system completely broken.
Completely.
And he's a Conservative.
I say to Tories all the time, who are you to criticise this lot? Because you were appalling. They did nothing. Legal migration went above 1 million in 1 year. Unbelievable. It was particularly bad on Boris Johnson's watch.
Number of people in asylum hotels under that immigration minister, Chris Philp, went up massively just in 1 year.
And listening and watching Philp there, I thought this is the problem the Conservative Party have, because it was your problem. You created the problem. The new government, Labour, has to deal with it in some way. But you created the problem. There's no contrition. There's no acceptance by you. Just, if the rate of hotel closures had continued, there'd be none now. He knows that was unsustainable. It would never have happened. And who opened the hotels in the first place? He was Immigration Minister himself. It's kind of he's a waste of space, Philp. He really is genuinely.
That's a little bit disrespectful.
No,
I don't think any politician is a waste of space.
Oh, I do.
But I think it's hard for.
A few of them.
We could start quite a long list.
So. And this is right. So Chris Philp and other people like Robert Jenrick. So this is Robert Jenrick, who's running for the leader of the Conservative Party. He's now kind of trying to court reforms policies here. They're talking about how you got to shut down the hotels. Oh my goodness, what are we spending on hotels? Labour have brought down spending on hotels for immigrants waiting for processing by £1 billion. But this was Jenrick in November 2022, just 3 years ago.
More hotels have been coming online almost every month throughout the whole of this year.
So he's congratulating his own Conservative government for more hotels coming online. So what I'd like to see is, as Kevin Maguire said there, a bit of contrition from some of these Conservative politicians.
So Suella Braverman and her predecessor, Priti Patel, were procuring more hotels. What I have done in my short tenure is ramp that up and procure even more.
So shouting about how wonderful it is that they've literally, there it is, it's in front of you there. And like 3 years later, they're saying, oh, bloody hotels need to be closed down. You opened up 400 plus of them and you were shouting about how wonderful that was. Anyway, you get my point. So there's a lot of opportunism going on in the political in a political landscape at the moment. So I think what we need to do is just wait a couple of years. I mean, literally a couple of years, because this is a long-term project, to see what Labour can do in terms of dealing with this issue that they have inherited. There's absolutely no doubt that this was inherited. The whole system was inherited, 14 years of Conservative rule, right? So it was inherited. Can they do something? The statistics are looking good for the Labour Party in terms of, if you're willing to sit down and go, have they improved? Yes, they have, across 5 different metrics, and I talked about them the other day. They are improving. Is it good enough? Is it quick enough? I don't know. We shall see. What reform? Now the problem here, and this is where I'm going to get a little bit political, in that I'm not a fan of reform, but I'm mainly not a fan of reform because they're a one-trick pony. And I'm going to explain to you why they definitely appear to be a one-trick pony. When you look at the rest of their policies, they don't really have a coherent either sense of budget or sense of the whole kind of manifesto, because they're so obsessed with immigration that they don't really have much thought for anything else. And what happens is that if you're going to vote reform in on immigration because you're so upset about immigration, then you're voting a bunch of people who don't really understand anything else about governance. And when it comes to Reform being a new party, what they're doing is they're picking up MPs who are fringe MPs, and they're picking up councillors who are just completely unable to understand local governance in the main. And I'm going to give you some statistics on this in a second, but they basically picked up loads of local councillors in the recent local elections. And someone phoned in from one of the councils. Which one was it? It was County Durham, I think. And she said, we've got 56 new reform councillors in the local council. They've swept into power, and she said 4 of them have local council experience. Only 4 out of 56 have ever worked in like local government before. So you might think that's brilliant. Let's get rid of these civil. Like, no one knows what they're doing. Like, they don't know how to run a government. They don't know what they need to do in meetings. They don't have a clue on how to run adult services and children's services. So you're voting people in because of immigration. So here is my big concern. So the whole point of this video is, this is what's going on. This will lead to Reform sweeping in the next general election. But Reform don't have a freaking clue how to run a country. And they're obsessed with immigration. And they're going to get people running for MPs who are obsessed with immigration, want to kick Muslims out, want to have a country that looks like that divisive sense of patriotism we saw earlier. But what are they going to do about education? What are they going to do about foreign policy? What are they going to do about this? What are they going to do about that? And it is deeply worrying that they are so unprepared, and because they don't have the depth of experience, unless they're going to essentially just completely kidnap, hijack the existing Conservative Party and infrastructure, they're going to be this nascent party without experience that will just burn our institutions to the ground and do to the UK what MAGA is doing to the United States. It will happen, mark my words. So let's give you at least some evidence for this. So this is just one thing that came out. This has come out this morning, but this is happening massively, and I'm going to give you some more stats on that. So Reform UK councillor Paul Bean has been suspended by the Home Office after alleged social media posts where they are just coming out with horrific things. So actually the Byline Times, a really good handle on Twitter that's actually keeping a tabs on this, is Reform Party UK Exposed. And honestly, I follow them, and every day there are councillors resigning, getting sacked for just being deeply inappropriate, being overtly racist, or for not knowing what they're doing, or for incompetence, right? Byline Times has had a look at some of these and has just released today an article on this. So Byline Times: sacked, expelled, or in the dock, all the Reform UK councillors Nigel Farage has lost in only 4 months. Party faces questions over candidate screening after a string of resignations, expulsions, and criminal investigations. So this goes into the detail of some of this. Then you got full resignations from councils and telling you why that has been the case from these different councils. You've had defections and attempted defections taking place. And then you've had quick-fire sackings of a number of people. Joseph Boehm is fascinating. You should look into this guy. As he's like a 12-year-old. He's not. He's just super young, and he was made deputy leader of the cabinet in Leicestershire County Council. He's now being investigated, but he is then put in the lead of adults and community role, even though he was like 18 or something. Honestly, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if you're taking anyone in, like, yeah, because we're running for all these different council positions, or we're running for all these different MP positions, 650 MP roles are going to come up in, or some of them. You've got 4 MPs at the moment, but they're going to reform, but they're going to run for all 650 and get loads of them, right? You are going to be taking in an awful lot of dross, right? It's just the way it's going to go, who are just, I'm going to run for MP because, I hate immigrants and blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to realise that they just don't know how to do the job that they are elected to do. Then you've got all of these suspensions and expulsions. Then you've got these people who are under Joseph Boehm, under criminal investigation, that have been elected in, found out to be, yeah. And then you got people who are elected in and never showed up. So no shows and truants. Then this ends up costing. They're like, we're going to vote for us because local government's costing too much. We're going to doge it. And it turns out they don't even turn up. And then you've got to run a by-election, which then costs the local council even more. And it's like, oh my goodness. Anyway, just this alone for like one relatively small party compared to the Labour and Conservative Party and their kind of infrastructure and Lib Dems around the country. And an even Green Party, actually, I'd say, because there are more Green Party local councillors than Reform. But Reform stood in a bunch of English local council elections, and they did really well. Now, the problem is these guys are platformed. I said I was going to return to this idea. And by the way, just to talk about this, so Colin Talbot, an emeritus professor of politics at the University of Manchester, said, quote, "I went through Reform's national policy statements and they had no policies whatsoever on local government, nothing at all. So no policy, they don't know, they have no opinion on local government, what to do with local government, yet they get voted in because people are just voting in local government on immigration. They want Reform in because anti-woke and immigration. It's like, okay, brilliant. But you don't know what these people's views are on potholes and adult education or adult social care in your local community, or on this, or on traffic management, or on whatever. Like, that's what you should be voting on in local elections. But of course, local elections just become a proxy for national issues. And if immigration is now the big national issue, then they're going to vote on that and then realise that these people don't know how to run the council. And that's what's happening. Now, the problem is that Reform are getting platformed massively, and this is a really big issue. As someone says here, how much do you think you're going to hear today about small boats crossings in the UK going down? Now, I reported some time ago to you that the BBC were, as a national broadcaster, public service broadcaster, have actually set out to appeal to Reform voters, because they were like, why don't Reform voters like us as a BBC? Why do they keep calling for the licence fee to be cancelled, blah, blah, blah. And so they've gone on this charm offensive for Reform. And that means that they are platforming Reform actually on purpose. Sky News are doing similar things, but the question is, how much is it on purpose? And that then feeds into this. If you're platforming, there's the mere exposure effect, which is more you say something, the more credible it becomes, and that's how advertising works. And so, the more attractive you become as a person, and your ideas become. So Nigel Farage has been platformed by mainstream media exceptionally well for his entire political career. He appeared on BBC Question Time more than any other person, and then complained that Reform don't get on enough. And it's like, it's literally the opposite of the truth. And he's always anti-BBC, but the BBC then pandered to that. Now, I was listening to LBC News in the car yesterday, and this is a perfect example, and it really pissed me off. So, ahead of Yvette Cooper appearing at the House of Commons to say what she just said, there was news that the Labour Party are going to change some of their asylums processing and policies and whatnot, and that's what she announced. So this was a news, and LBC News reported this and say, well, Labour are going to come on and they're going to change things up, and it went straight to a Reform UK Party member who slammed the Labour Party, even though no one knew what they were going to say. Right? So slammed the Labour Party. And I'm not trying to be a Labour Party shield, but it was obvious that this was completely unfair. And then they had Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, come on and slam the Labour Party over immigration, right? So you had the Labour Party are going to announce something, slam the Labour Party, and that went on for like at least 5 minutes, which on a news, like constantly, like that was a long time. The Kemi Badenoch's was really quite long, but the Reform as well. And then no Labour voice, no Green Party voice, no Lib Dem Party voice. Now, Lib Dem have way more MPs than Reform Party. Green Party have more MPs than the Reform UK Party. But you heard from Reform UK and you heard from the Conservative Party and not even from Labour themselves. It didn't even book someone from Labour to give their opinion on immigration. It was just Labour are going to say something and here's all the criticism that we can find against what Labour's position is, or not even, we don't even know what their position is, but we're just going to have big criticisms of them anyway. I was like, and so if you're listening to that, and this is happening routinely, you are essentially hearing, all you're hearing is criticisms of the government. Now, I know newscasters should be holding the government to account, but holding to account, you've also got to be able to listen to what the government is saying. Like, you can't just go to town on critiquing one side and never critique the other side. So, like, the Reform and Conservative parties weren't held to account. They weren't critiqued by the news readers or journalists there. They were just platformed in their criticism. And if that is representative of what is going on across the board, then the Labour Party already they have one newspaper, tabloid newspaper, The Mirror, that's got some readership, but it's not huge compared to, say, The Sun and the Daily Mail. And they've got the Guardian, which is your broadsheet, middle-class intelligentsia type newspaper, that has quite a bit of online readership around the world, but is not huge compared to the Daily Mail, The Sun, the Daily Express, the Times, the Daily Telegraph, the Spectator, and of course, Mail Online is one of the biggest outlets in the world for news. The Evening Standard, Metro, the Financial Times, which is centre right. All of the media landscape is against, like, Labour from a messaging point of view, from the mechanics of messaging. And so when then Sky News, which has been accused of doing this recently, as well as the BBC, then appear to be platforming critics of the government, then it's impossible for Labour to ever prevail. Like, they won't get voted back in, but it will be much more in the control of the narrative. And the control of the narrative, and I wrote articles on this 10 years ago, so this hasn't changed. This has forever been the same. But it is stacked against, say, Labour ever being able to get a foot in the door, really. So this social media world we live in is very troubling. And I go back to what Andrew Marr told us. You know, go outside, meet actual people, see that they're smiling, that they're normal. What you see online is dangerous, but it is whipping up this sense of a divided nation. And then it helps to divide the nation. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. And then when you have Elon Musk as the most powerful man in the world coming along, and Russia helping to stir the smash the hornet's nest, then you get protests like you're seeing. And it is very, very worrying, because those protests are, I'm sorry, but they are full of people who are overwhelmingly racist. It's not to inhibit discussions about immigration. We need those discussions. So then it gets back to this idea that, yeah, so have all those more horrible sides of the immigration debate actually promoted Labour to come out and be super strong for a Labour Party, for what should be a centre-left party, to go quite strong against immigration. Yeah, so it might have actually propelled Labour to be really strong, but then we're back to this situation. Not strong. I don't mean that in a good way. I mean, they're being robust, whatever your views on immigration are, compared to, what they've been accused of being. But actually, I think that they've been kind of stronger on immigration probably than the Conservatives were being before they took over. So really interesting switch there. But then it's this issue that Labour are going to be taken apart in the next election, where the left of the Labour Party will go to Jeremy Corbyn's New York Party or the Green Party, and then you'll be left with a small kind of centrist, centre-right aspect of Labour, and you're still not going to win over those reform voters. Some of those reform voters are former Labour voters from the working class and northern areas that would have traditionally voted left-wing, but now the trade union kind of sense of working class northern, like mining towns and cities and whatever, that's no longer a thing. Now we live in a social media age, and social media will define the next elections. So, and that is really my worry. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this topic. Again, I think it's important to talk about it. Please don't come on and say, oh, you should just be talking about Ukraine. I talk about anything on my channel that I want to, because it's my channel. You don't have to watch every video. And if you don't like talking about these prickly issues, or if you think I'm being some kind of liberal lefty that doesn't have a clue about the problems of immigration, then you're kind of misreading what I'm saying. Let's have immigration debates. It's just that my sense of an immigration debate doesn't really look like that, right? And is that the country I want? That is not the country I want. I don't like seeing this. It upsets me, because that is not what I'm proud of Britain for. So there you go. Take care. Speak to you soon.